Hi, this is Gail Sokol. On today's show, we're going to talk about stovetop custards made with a starch added.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
So last week, we talked about stovetop custards made without a starch. And we actually made a crème anglaise, which is a French custard sauce. And we learned we could use this as a base for a French vanilla ice cream if you put it in an ice cream maker. We could paint a plate with it. That's what I always like to say when I decorate a plate under a chocolate cake or a slice of pie. I'll put a spoonful of crème anglaise on that. And sometimes I'll put a little berry sauce over that as well to make it pretty. This week, we're going to be talking about stovetop custards made with a starch added, sort of part 2 of our stovetop custard series, if you will. This is slightly different because it's got, again, cornstarch added. And it's very different in how you can treat it, which is sort of cool. So to review, a stovetop custard is a mixture of dairy usually, eggs, and flavorings. And a custard in general is any liquids thickened or coagulated with egg proteins. So we're going to be taking usually a dairy product like milk, half and half, cream, or any combination of any of those, because you can make it as rich as you want and you can make it as less rich. Some people who are watching their diet, they might want to use more of maybe a skim milk, whole milk blend instead of the cream. So this is thickened on the stove, and it uses the coagulation of egg proteins to thicken it. Again, those protein strands that look like curly pieces of curly hair under a microscope will straighten out as they're heated and hold moisture in between them. And this is what actually creates the thickness. So we're going to be actually creating a pastry cream or a pudding. And this starts getting really interesting. So if you've ever had a chocolate cream pie, coconut cream pie, vanilla cream pie, I could go on and on, lemon cream pie, lemon meringue pie, the filling, the lemon part in that lemon meringue pie, or the coconut cream pie or chocolate cream pie, those are all stovetop custards made with a starch added. And they're really a lot of fun to make. You can make them in any flavor that you want to. But here's the kicker. A starch is added instead of having to really watch the temperature like we did with our crème anglaise. We had to watch to make sure that the egg proteins didn't curdle our mixture, because that would have been a disaster. So there are a lot of benefits to adding a starch. So usually eggs are very temperamental to heat, like I said in the previous show about stovetop custards without a starch. So we had to super be careful. But if we add a starch into the mix, it actually protects the egg proteins, preventing them from getting too close together. Remember, we talked about those denatured protein strands getting close and holding moisture between them? Well, if you overcook them, the curdling comes in when they get too close together. And that's when they force moisture out of them and become big clumps and curds. And that is not what we want. So the starch will elevate. Are you listening to this? This is cool stuff. The starch will actually elevate the coagulation temperature of the egg. So you can actually boil the mixture. Oh, that's unbelievable, right? You can actually bring it to a boil. I'm not kidding, because it contains starch. Super cool and very useful knowledge. So in my book, my new book, Baking with Success, I have some ice cream recipes and custard recipes. Some use a starch and some don't use a starch. And I explained why when you use a starch, you can bring it to a boil. So I think that's a super cool thing to know. So let me give you an easy pastry cream, as we like to call it in the culinary world, or vanilla pudding recipe right now. It's really easy to make. So you're going to take 1 cup of whole milk, and you're going to take out 2 tablespoons of that whole milk, and you're going to save it. So 1 cup minus 2 tablespoons. And you're going to put the majority of the milk, the 1 cup part, into a medium saucepan. And you're going to add a 1/2 cup of heavy cream, and you're going to bring that to a boil or to a simmer, close to a boil. And in a heat-proof stainless steel or tempered glass mixing bowl, you're going to whisk egg yolks, 3 of them, 3 large egg yolks, a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons plus 1.5 teaspoons of cornstarch, and the 2 tablespoons of reserve milk. And you're going to whisk that together. And it may be a little thick, so keep whisking. And don't allow any of it to stay dry. Really whisk it up very, very well. Now, slowly, once your milk and cream mixture get to a boil, you're going to start tempering this egg mixture. And slowly pour that hot dairy, that milk and cream, into the egg yolk mixture, whisking constantly. So you're going to temper your eggs. Remember, slow and steady until all the milk's been added. And then you're going to pour the mixture back into that saucepan, that same saucepan. Don't even have to wash it. And you're going to place it over medium-high heat. For our stovetop custard made without a starch, we said lower heat, right? We didn't want to bring it to a boil. Well, here we can go to town. We're going to bring it to a boil. So we're going to bring it to a boil, but we're going to never stop mixing and whisking. The mixture will become super thick relatively quickly. It's going to probably take a minute or less. And you're going to boil and whisk it for about 1 minute. And if it starts really like popping out at you because it's boiling so much, you can turn the heat down a little bit. Once it's thickened and reached its full thickening strength, you'll see it'll turn into like a pudding. Don't allow it to burn because it can still burn, but it would take a lot more effort. Remember, we've elevated the coagulation temperature of these egg yolks, right? That's the cool part of adding this starch. And now you're going to remove it from the heat, and you're going to whisk in 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, not artificial. Then you're going to put the custard into a bowl, a nice clean bowl, not any type of a bowl that you had raw eggs in before, but a cleaner bowl. And you're going to place a piece of plastic wrap. Now listen to what I'm saying. This is another tip. You're going to place a piece of plastic wrap directly onto the custard, directly onto that pastry cream. Not over the bowl, but onto the pastry cream. Let it touch the pastry cream. This is going to prevent a skin from forming. And this is known as casein. It forms from dairy products that have been exposed to air. And sometimes when you make pudding and you let it sit in little cups in the refrigerator, you'll see this skin. And unless you cover it with plastic wrap or wax paper or something directly over the pudding itself, you'll have this skin develop. I think Julia Child, the great Julia Child, used to put a little pat of butter over her vanilla pastry creams and let that melt on top. And that would prevent any air from getting to that pastry cream. And that's what we're really doing. We're preventing air from getting to the pastry cream and allowing this casein, this protein, to form this skin, because it's not pretty. So you're going to keep this custard filling in the refrigerator, and it can be made 1 day in advance to let it thicken. So you don't want to use it for anything on the same day that you make it. So what can you use this wonderful concoction for? The center of eclairs. What do you think they're stuffed with? Pastry cream, vanilla pastry cream. Boston cream pie, which is really not a pie. It's actually like sponge cake with this vanilla pastry cream in the middle, and then it's got chocolate sauce or fudge sauce drizzled over the top. A cake filling. You could use it instead of frosting on the inside of a cake. You could make a fruit tart. Think about that. So you can make a pastry crust, all right? Put it into a false bottom tart pan, blind bake it. That means baking it without any filling whatsoever. Take it out of the oven and let it cool, and then pour your pastry cream in that crust, and then decorate it with fresh fruit. and maybe put a little glaze of maybe raspberry jam. Delicious as a fancy fruit tart. Or you can make it into a parfait. I'm loaded with ideas. So you could have layered fruit or a trifle. Have you ever heard of a trifle with little cubes or squares of sponge cake with liqueur soaked into them? And you put fresh fruit and vanilla pastry cream in between the layers. And that is scrumptious. It can be layered and flavored in any way you want. You could add chocolate to it while it's still hot and add dark or semi-sweet or milk chocolate to it and whisk it in, or even whisk in some cocoa powder or almond extract or any other extract. You can make coconut vanilla pastry cream. I am really coming up with a lot of ideas. I got to write these down. This is it's amazing what you can do with vanilla pastry cream. So we have learned how to make stovetop custards without starches, and now we're learning how to make stovetop custards with a starch. And the bonus is you can bring it to a boil. Okay, sort of cool. So if you have any questions about stovetop custards, any which way they're made, please go on over to bakingradio.com and leave me a message. I would love to answer some of your questions on air. Next week's show, we're going to be discussing oven custards.